Alright guys, welcome back to another Harry Potter book review. My name is James.
Ninetailedbrush.
And today we are doing part 2 of Order of the Phoenix review. Where did we leave off? Right when Hagrid came back to talk about the Giants, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's where we left off.
We might have touched up on some other stuff like in the later chapters. I didn't even notice, but I think I did. We might have touched on a little bit of stuff, but I don't know.
Okay, well, we're generally going from the giant part until the end of the book, and then we're obviously going to do overview and different things like that. So, overall, the magical big question, what did you think generally of this book?
Generally,
and then obviously the comparison to the movie, because, you know, as much as we've said we're not going to do that, we've been doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's honestly fair.
Well,
just because, you know.
That's what we saw first.
Yeah. So, overall, the second part, I liked better than the first part. Mm-hmm. But overall, the book in general, I think this is one of my lower ones, definitely.
So it's weird, because I still enjoyed the story a lot, but I actually think that, and I know this may be Harry Potter sacrilege, but I actually think that I enjoyed the movie better than the book. Or actually, let's say this. I think they were equal, and I think that the things that were cut or changed, like a lot of times in an adaptation, like Lord of the Rings, they cut big sections of things out. I was totally okay with that as an adaptation. Yeah. This was the first Harry Potter book that I read where I was like, it's cool getting some of this behind the scenes and some of these extra details, but I am totally okay and I totally understand why the movie cut it, and I think the movie works really well as a movie. Like, it's the opposite reaction of Goblet of Fire. Like, I was like, oh, I think the movie is a really good adaptation of the book. And so I don't hate the story. I generally like the story. I actually think the book, I don't know, did you get the vibe the book was a little bit slow? Like, as opposed to, aside from the details of it, I think the book itself was paced a little bit slower. I
don't know if the book was paced a little bit slow, but I think it was paced a little bit off.
Right, it felt off.
Because, like, there are times where it was slow where I was like, oh, okay, wait, why is it this slow? You know, and I was like, okay, maybe it's just a slow book. But then there were also times where there was a lot there, you know, and I was like, oh, yeah. Wow, okay.
Yeah, so, like, details aside, that's why I think I would say that the movie did a little bit of a better job, because the pacing, for once, you know, it's always the complaint in the opposite direction where it's like things are moving too fast. This book, the pacing was wonky, and I think the pacing in the movie was a little bit better done.
Yeah, I think so, too. Like, there were definitely things I liked in the book compared to the movie, like I said in the previous one. The whole flying through the city thing, I thought that was done better in the book, because it felt way more serious, not just a joyride.
No, for sure.
But, like, I think overall, I definitely I liked how the movie did things and what they cut out, what they kept in, compared to the book. So.
Yeah, I agree. To kind of get into it, what did you think as far as character developments, different things? Like, the big thing we've been talking about is Harry, right? We talked about it last video in part 1. I think it's worthy to talk about in this video. I really think, and this makes me excited for the next book, A, because everybody's been talking about Half-Blood Prince, like, before we started reading the books, but B, I think that this book is serving as a low moment in the series. Like something that actually I do appreciate with Rowling is that Rowling, sorry, we've been saying it wrong. Rolling. It rhymes with bowling. That's what somebody said in the comments. Anyway, Rowling. Something that I appreciate that Rowling's been doing is that as the books have gone on, they've gotten serious and whatever, but also I think that she has found less of a need to wrap up the story. Yeah. And you can tell she's like, oh, okay, people are like, this is an extended universe, kind of like. Yeah. And so people are enjoying this as a series. And so I think this is really an element of that, where I know Harry was like really angry and moody and everything in this book. I really think that some of that was resolved with him talking to Dumbledore at the end, but also I think that this, in the overarching story of the series, is his low moment. Like, we're halfway in the middle here. Sirius died, Cedric died. This is so clearly not a kid's movie anymore. Voldemort is fully back. You know, people are dying all around Harry. Like, this is his low moment. And so I'm curious to see, as a character going through the rest of the series, where he's going to go.
Yeah, it does feel like that. You know, you have the individual, you know, books which have their own, like, character arcs and stuff like that and development. But the overall series is now starting to really feel like this, you know, like that epic overall plot. Yeah. Not just the mini plots, right? The books are almost like their own separate stories, and then you have them combined as like the, you know, overarching story. And so it is with Harry, you know, kind of being a little more moody and things like that. He is in his, low point or whatever you were saying. It does feel like, okay, everything is open-ended still, and we can still see more development. Whereas in earlier books, it did feel a little more like enclosed and like, okay, like this is definitely a story in itself,
And I think that's why it caused some like confusion, right? Because like you seemed a little frustrated by like how, because he's so like he pushes Ron and Hermione away to a frustrating level.
Yeah,
a lot of times
it does. Like, of course, it could be just personal, opinion or bias. Like, I want a hero to be, or a main character to be a certain way. Like, I feel like that's just normal. There are stories with main characters I just don't care for, and I just don't read those stories.
Of course.
And so, in this, it felt like it was missing a little bit of that older Harry Potter that I was, getting in the other books. And so, it was kind of like a personal thing where I was like, I'm not enjoying his vibe, so to speak.
Yeah. Now, I kind of forgave some of that because I think it's right. Yeah.
Okay. I did as well. Like, honestly, well, of course, in the beginning, also, like, I was like, okay, well, I mean, of course, people are treating him poorly and stuff like that. I mean, he is, Harry Potter. He's been through a decent amount, right? I feel like they're treating him a little unfair with withholding a lot of this stuff. And so I was like, okay, I understand. Like, he's going through some stuff. Like, Dementors attacked him. No one's believing him. Freaking Minister's taking away.
Super frustrating.
Like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's very frustrating. But also, like, as we learned towards the end, it's like, I feel like people did make mistakes on the stuff that they kind of, like, withheld as far as, like, information goes. And it ended up really causing issues that I feel like could have been avoided. And I don't really see the reasons, like, for withholding this information. Like, I feel like it hurts way more than it benefits us.
Yeah, so I think a lot of his moodiness was confusion, and I like that Rowling isn't afraid to kind of wallow in that. Mm-hmm. As depressing as that may be, because I do think then I'm very interested to see how, like, okay, he really is getting beaten down at every turn, like how he's going to rise to the occasion as this goes on. But yeah, okay, so as far as Dumbledore's character, because there was kind of the whole mystery, I am just so happy about, the book gets like 1 million bonus points because I finally freaking understand everything.
Yes.
So I will give them that. I like the whole explaining scene, and that's honestly more of a critique on the movies as a whole than necessarily actually Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah.
But like it was really nice because there's that whole like Dumbledore sit down where they're like, okay, it's the scar. This is why you're like, they never answer this question of why you're stuck with the Dursleys in the movies.
Yeah.
So you're watching the movies being like, why do you keep going back to these horrible people?
Exactly.
So like them explaining things like that, I really appreciated just for clarity's sake.
Yeah, I did appreciate that too. And I think the books do a good job of that, using that medium of being able to explain and elaborate more. They do, do a good job. And, of course, if we read the books before, watching the movies,
we probably would have understood.
Yeah, we would have understood and been like, okay. Yeah. But, going into them blind, it's kind of like, I mean, there's a whole lot being thrown at us. So it's like, I feel like you got to take into account, like, there's going to be new people watching this that have no idea what Harry Potter is.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like that's a...
Yeah, for sure. But I don't really... Well, not blame. I mean, it's so weird. Like I don't want to get too obsessed about, like how these people rank on our moral scale. And I think you kind of get caught up in that a little bit.
Yeah.
I really liked the Dumbledore moment, and I totally understand why he didn't tell Harry. I'm not saying it was good that he didn't tell Harry, but he admitted he was wrong in telling Harry. Like, that whole scene at the end, I thought was really well done. Kind of going a little bit into themes a little bit. I thought there were some very interesting ideas of, like, kind of a commentary on a well-meaning parent, which I thought was really fascinating. And hear me out. It was like, because the big thing Dumbledore kept saying is he was like, every year I wanted to tell you, but I was like, oh, you're 12, that's too young, and 13, it's too young, and then, Cedric had just died, and I didn't want to ruin that. And he was like, I played into Voldemort's plan because I started caring about you. And he was like, that was my mistake. And I thought that was kind of a beautiful, like, flaw, almost. And I think that is something that I can see parents suffering with a little bit. And it's kind of an interesting idea where you see people, like, pamper their kids a little bit too much. But it's not, like, as simple as, oh, you're a horrible parent. It's like they truly care for them. And so it comes out of this, like, this love, obviously misdirected. And so I thought it was kind of cool that was addressed, and then that, you know, also Dumbledore admitted he was wrong and kind of was like, look, that was my fault, and he took responsibility for that. So I don't really, you know, as of now, once again, I don't really hold Dumbledore as like an evil person, especially because not only did he acknowledge, like, he explained why he did it, which is understandable, even though it may not be right, but I think he also owned it. Like Harry was, you know, horrified that he was responsible for Sirius, and Dumbledore just straight up said, like, no, that was my fault. And I think that's, to me, that shows, like, a good person, a good, like, integrity, good character. Yeah.
No, yeah, I totally, you can't, I feel like there's no way you can, like, sit here and judge, you know, these sort of situations. It's like, okay, is this person, like, you know,
it's impossible.
Evil? Is this person, you know, not evil? You know, it's too hard. And I feel like one of the things that Rowling was trying to kind of show in this book was that, okay, we're going from a kid, you know, looking up at these older adults and putting them on pedestals, and then realizing that, hey, these people are people and they're humans and they make mistakes. Right?
Which I think is beautiful. And it's like, if you look at it at the age that Harry is, it's like that is kind of one that, at least when it happened to me, like that, I think every kid goes through that. And so I could totally see, I mean, reading now, I related. I can't even imagine if you're Harry's age reading that book being like, oh, that's, like, that has to be so cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting to see, because you see it a lot throughout the book of, like, oh, you know, we always talked about these people, like, whether it be, you know, Sirius or...
That's what I was going to say. I noticed that a lot with the whole Sirius, Lupin, Snape thing as well.
Yeah, Lupin, Snape, his dad, right?
Yeah.
You know, we were always talking about them, like, oh, these are great people, I want to be like them, or whatever, you know, I want them as my foster parent, or whatever, and then it's like, oh, they might have done some things that weren't that cool, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, you realize that, hey, they're just humans, you know, and they make mistakes, but does that necessarily make them evil people? Do you have to, you know, are they now Voldemort to you? Like, no, they aren't.
Yeah.
But you now, you know, realize that, hey, this is what reality is.
Yeah.
And that's it, you know, and I feel like towards the end we see that with Dumbledore even. Like, Dumbledore was, well, at least how Rowling wrote it, was like, he felt like this almost otherworldly person. He felt a little bit like, you know, he was different.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And in this book, we definitely see that he is very much susceptible to making mistakes.
Of course.
And making the wrong judgments.
Yeah.
And honestly, you know, what he did, I feel like was, you know, I can see where he's coming from. I personally didn't agree with, you know, how he did it and stuff like that, and
yeah, which is why I'm glad that they admit that he's wrong with the book, and then he himself admits that it's wrong,
which is cool. It is cool, and that already is reason enough to believe that Dumbledore is a genuinely good person
and a trustworthy person. I think that he still is, even though it was kind of misdirect. Like, there's different sorts of evil, so to speak, like, especially in fantasy, right, where you get the Voldemort where it's truly evil for evil's sake, you know, Bellatrix, those kind of people. But it's like, even something like this, it was out of a misaligned good. Like, he cares about Harry, and he cares about Harry's well-being, and because of that, he was too protective, right? You know what I mean? It's kind of like this misordered good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a big theme of the book, you know?
Yes. I mean, do we want to talk about Snape? Because I think we got a lot of character development for Snape, which I thought was interesting, and I don't really know what to think about it. This is kind of a bit of a side theory, but I honestly also think that one of the reasons Snape it causes such controversy and is so confusing is because I think that, look, this is just my fan theory now.
Okay.
I don't think Rowling knew that he was going to be evil the whole time, or good the whole time. I think that he was your standard evil, annoying teacher, books 1 and 2, maybe even 3, and she didn't get the idea to do that until 4 and 5. And the evidence that I have to back that up, which, okay, it's weird because it's like, I looked it up because when they made the movies, she told Alan Rickman that the whole story of Snape, right? So the movies came out, they started production on the movies between the 4th book and the 5th book, I believe, or the 3rd book and the 4th book. I forget. Between 2 books. So it's like, there's no active proof that she knew, but there's also no active proof that she didn't either. Anyway, that's just my crazy theory. If you guys want to nerd out in the comments about that.
Interesting.
Because, I don't know, it just feels a little bit, not like horribly inconsistent, but just a tiny bit inconsistent. Because even in this book, he was cruel, but he wasn't the same kind of cruel that he is in book 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Like, didn't he feel not completely like a different character, but a little bit like a different character? Like, he had a short temper and he was frustrated, but there's a lot of, like, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit off camera, where it's like a lot of really horrible terminology, especially in book 1 and 2, about like him laughing at this evil. Whereas 3, 4, and this book, not nearly as much. Like, you get the vibe that he obviously has a bias towards Harry because of his past, which I think is totally understandable. Not necessarily good, but understandable. And because it's less like kind of over the top, it makes a little more sense.
Yeah, I mean, that could also just be like learning, you know, how to write him, or, you know, things like that, right? Yeah. And how to try to make him a little more likable or things like that. Honestly, like, I mean, I've been kind of collecting stuff for this whole like Snape discussion that I'm assuming we might have at the end. But, you know, just going into that a little bit, like, I personally think that how Snape is written, I honestly think the mistake lies in how Rowling like presents him and writes him. I think he's a poorly written character as of right now. That's what I think. And like in the 1st and 2nd book, the way that she portrays him is very one-dimensional, and you can definitely see, like, especially the way that she describes him and how he reacts to like cruel things that he does to the kids. Yeah. Like him smiling or grinning with like pleasure or stuff. It's like, that seems so like off
That's
base.
Why, yeah.
That it's like, okay, well, the idea, like, without thinking about the moves at all, when I look at this Snape in the book, it's like, okay, this is a bad person, you know? Like, you don't.
But also, like you said, more just one note, even.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, my idea of this character is like, he's just a bad person and he's a teacher and he's just, that's all. Like, I don't know what to say. Whereas in the movies and stuff, we don't get that sense of like, oh, okay, like he's enjoying like torturing kids. He's more like that, you know, that very strict, might be a little petty at times, you know, gets a little like frustrated with, and is a little more biased against Harry, but he's not like, he doesn't completely enjoy, you know, making people suffer, which I feel like the 1st and 2nd book started to set me up with that Snape. Mm-hmm. And then as like this book goes on, it's a little more like, okay, we're starting to get a little more like complexity to him, not from just telling us things, but from how he is written. Like, that's
why I'm saying I don't know if it's. That's why I think it's almost a little unfair to say his entire character is poorly written, because I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I feel like it's just inconsistent, because there were scenes, especially in this book, like, for all you guys who don't like Snape, I freaking re-fell in love with Snape this book. Like, there were scenes that the way they did it and the way they walked that line of his frustration with Harry and he's still trying to help him, I thought were really well done. And so I that's why, like, I have the theory, or even if it's not that, it just seems like, you know, maybe the series is maturing a little bit. It's like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Like, if you read the Hobbit book, like, the ring is not the same thing that it is in the Fellowship. Yeah, okay. And I might kind of mentally sort of make that break, because it it seems like maybe she's getting a little bit better as a writer, or she didn't have the idea, or whatever it may be. It seems inconsistent, but I think that the last few books, that has seemed consistent, and I think that's actually a really complex and well-written character. It's just that if you compare it, especially to book 1 and 2, it doesn't quite fit. So I feel like, at least for me, it's more of an inconsistency problem as opposed to a shallow character, because he's kind of a little bit of a one-note character in book 1 and 2, but then he gets like really complex, but kind of out of nowhere, and not really consistent with what was presented in 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to break out all the big guns because I'll save them for later.
Yeah,
but like
that would just be my I guess counter.
Yeah,
we have Umbridge, who's horrible.
Yeah, like
really horrible.
I was surprised that she got I think she did get saved in the movie. They
Does she?
I think that she did.
Or they just left her, or they had her go to jail or something.
Yeah, I think they retrieved her, but she did go to jail or something like that.
Here. How about all you guys who love Peeves? That was a worthy Peeves. Everybody's been like, why are you not talking about Peeves? Personally, I think he's cool, but there were never, like, when we're talking about the book review, there were never points worth talking about. I think with Peeves, totally understand how he wasn't a part of the movies. I can also totally understand, as a fan of Peeves, I would be frustrated by that. But I just was never offended by him being in it or not being in it. But that was a moment I liked. The end where he smacks Umbridge over the head with the cane.
Yes.
Cool moment. I'll give Peeves a shout out for that. That was cool. I liked that.
Yeah, and him with Fred and George and showing that respect. I like.
Yes.
He's
becoming more likable.
Yeah, like in the first stuff, there was so much more that I was like kind of, I don't know, wanting to see of, like more magic things or, explanations of certain things. That to me, when I saw Peeves, I was kind of like, oh shoot, this is another extra thing I don't really care about.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. It seemed kind of like an extra thing.
Yeah, so for me, it takes some like more warming up too. That's just my honest opinion. This book, like, definitely, I was like, oh, okay, he's definitely,
Well, I also feel like it's funnier when he interacts a little bit more with the main characters. Like before, it was kind of like he was a cool thing of Hogwarts, but now, like, whether good or bad, like, he's interacting a little bit more with the characters, and so I'm having more of an opinion of him as opposed to it kind of being like
just
a
there.
cool aesthetic. Yeah. But
no,
yeah,
cool
I really liked
aesthetic.
that. I liked Umbridge. I don't think it was a bad representation in the movie. I actually think it's just because I think it was a great representation in the movie. I think just because it spends more time with Umbridge, that she feels a little worse.
Yeah.
I don't think it was like, wow, completely different character, what did you do, or anything. I actually think the movie did a great job in adapting her.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I mean, even though, yeah, you like you say, it does feel like, since we spend a little more time with her, probably that, she is a little more like evil or something, like Sirius or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think that the movie did it justice. Like the actor that plays her and everything, like every little thing that she does, it's very,
ticks,
very
everything
good.
was so frustrating.
Yeah, like I couldn't really imagine like another, live action Umbridge. Like I think she really fits
No,
it.
I think she killed it.
Yeah.
I really liked. What did you think of the whole Weasley thing?
All
All the Weasleys. We can talk about all the Weasleys. Fred and George, and because we're just talking characters here, and then we could dive into some themes.
Okay, so honestly, one of my favorite parts of this book was when they were they spent more time after Harry had that vision of attacking their
the
dad.
snake. Yeah,
and so I like how much it affected all of them.
Did
it
that
felt
happen
so
in the book?
serious.
In the movie?
In the movie, I don't.
Did they even
remember
go
that.
to the hospital? I don't remember that.
I don't remember that, but it felt so hardcore and like real,
Yes.
And I was like, oh dang,
Yes.
Harry thinking oh gosh, did I attack them, and then hiding it and stuff, and everyone's reactions, Ron being very quiet and not knowing what to do kind of, and Fred and George kind of being really mad, right, and they're having their little squabble with Sirius and stuff.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that because it really felt so real, and it was even though it wasn't sometimes Sirius, how Sirius was saying, you can't, go out there and let people know that this happened kind of deal. We got to keep it secret. But it's they're saying dude, it's our dad, who cares about the order? What are you talking
I really liked that. I liked that whole I think all of the Weasleys. I mean, Ginny popped back in this book, which I was really happy about.
Yeah.
And I think she got some cool moments. Like, I like Ginny's character so much better in the books than the movies.
Well, because she wasn't even really a character.
Yeah, but it's like I honestly think that the movies did all the side characters kind of dirty. Like,
oh yeah, all
like
of them.
dude, Fred and George, like
they're like non-existent
they're not
compared
like
to
they're kind of cool. They play like hardly any role. Percy, like
yes,
what? Like
I know.
I think we forgot to wait. Was it last book or was it this book that Percy was? No, it was this book that Percy was big and annoying. I think I forgot to talk about Percy in part 1, but I want to talk because what the heck is wrong with him? Like, jeez.
I think just after the whole ministry thing.
I know, but that was. I mean, I liked that they did that, but dude, I freaking hated him. He was pissing me off.
Yeah.
I was pissed at Percy. But I just like all, like, honestly, that's why I was like, let's just talk about all the weeks, because I liked that they gave all of them character development. I liked that they explained the whole thing with Fred and George.
Yeah.
And how they were kind of like working on their inventions as like a C or D storyline.
Yeah.
Throughout, and then they just got their shop. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought everything was really cool.
No, I really enjoyed that because and this is the thing is like if it's like later on when like the stuff does happen, the deaths and all that, I feel like things are gonna impact us a lot more.
Dude, don't even talk about it. Freaking Lupin and Tonks. I'm like, I love these guys, and then I'm like thinking about the last movie, and I'm like, no.
Dude, yeah, because it's like that bittersweet feeling of like, yes, we're spending more time and we're having more fun, and it's like, oh wait, the impending doom is approaching.
Yes. Yes.
And it's like, dude, yeah, like we just have more connection with these characters now, and
yeah.
It's gonna hit a lot harder. Like,
now, this is gonna be once again a controversial opinion.
Okay.
I liked the way Sirius died in the movie better than the book. Actually, okay. They were different. I'm not saying one is actually better than the other. I really liked the movie moment that they added where Sirius calls Harry James. And when they're both kind of in the thick of it a little bit more than they were, at least the way they described it in the book. Maybe I was imagining it differently. I just liked that you got the Avada Kedavra or whatever, as opposed to him just falling through the veil. Because everybody said they explained the veil a little bit more, but they didn't fully.
I feel like they kept it just as mysterious.
Like, Luna explains it at the end and is like, oh, like, as kind of like an allegory, as we'll see more people, like the dead, but they don't even still explain what the actual arch is.
Yeah, it's kind of just an artifact that's there.
So that's why I kind of like that they, just had Bellatrix do the killing curse. And I just like that Harry was, like, right next to him there in that moment. And I also, even though it was cheesy and maybe not part of Rowling lore, like, I liked how all of the Order of the Phoenix did their, like, freaking flying thing like the Death Eaters did, and they all showed up. Like, that was a super epic moment in the movie, and it was a little bit more just kind of like, oh, we're in the thick of it, somebody's gonna die, oh my gosh, they're here to save us. Like, it was more kind of like just in the thick of everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Whereas that moment, like, I got chills watching that moment. Like, that was such an epic moment, and then having them all fight together for the first time, really, and yeah, I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, I think, especially since it was like one of our first times seeing like a high level wizard battle, I felt like it really needed that. I feel like that's when you can really add that like Hollywood, vibe. Yes. Because it's like, oh, you want it to be very impactful and very, eye catching, because it's like, oh yes, like, we've been through this, studying about certain magic spells, doing a few of them, but then like once we see like, hey, these are like the the top people, we want to see some like hardcore action.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm a little conflicted as to which one I liked better as far as the death of Sirius. I am leaning a little more towards how the movie did it. Maybe it's just because I watched it first. I have no idea. Yeah. So that, to me, that was actually a very impactful moment as far as all the movies go, and so I think that for me it's very hard to like top that.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe if it doesn't make sense at certain times or whatever, like I still think like
no, I mean, look, it's just personal opinion. I mean,
yeah, I still think it was very well done, and it was very emotional.
What did you think? So this is something that I never thought I would kind of say, but what did you think? Like, I thought the magic was better in this book than it was in any of the other books so far. What do you think? Like, there was something about it, and maybe it's because they're learning more, but... And this is the same for the movie as well, so I'm curious to see how then the movies compare later on. But that, like, the wizard battle at the end of Order of the Phoenix is freaking epic, okay? That's super cool, and it's basically straight out of the book. But I really liked the magic in this book. Like, there was the whole moment where Dumbledore uses the statues and is, like, fighting everybody off in the book that I really liked. And even Harry fighting in the Department of Mysteries, even more than the movie, I thought was really well done. Like, there was something about the magic that maybe before it just felt like they had one or two kind of spells, and then it was kind of just vague, like laser beam sort of thing. Whereas, like, in this book especially, I don't know why, maybe it was just the feel of this book, it felt a lot more like you have these specific spells and it's kind of like a strategy where it's like, okay, there's like a killing curse here, but then it's like, oh, we don't know what happened to this person here. And then seeing Harry use Wingardium Leviosa that we haven't seen in forever, like, it was like, I just liked it. It felt more strategic, and it felt a little bit less like a gun that's also a wand, and it felt a lot more like, okay, you are using your skills and your ingenuity, kind of, where it's like you have these clever spells and these different things, and you're using those to counter and attack, as opposed to just like, oh, everybody has the killing curse, everybody kind of blocks it, everybody does the oh shoot, what's the thing where you take the wand out of their hand? Dang it, I'm forgetting what it is. I'm just exposing myself as a failed Harry Potter fan here. You know, like, there just seemed like those two or three, and then that was kind of it. Like, oh, Lumos, and you're like, okay, like, that was it. Whereas this, it felt a lot more like, oh, shoot, like, I don't know what heck this spell this guy threw at me. Like, how am I going to deflect it? Or I'm going to block this thing here. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I did think that, like, you know, in the earlier books, we did get a bit of very specific spells, but they were more used for, like, I don't know, comedic moments, or like, you know, what's his name, Draco, like, bullying or something like that.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it was at times like that. Honestly, I didn't think of it as much, because I was thinking, like, okay, as the book was progressing, they just got more knowledge or something. So I was thinking, like, okay, I guess, or I wasn't even thinking it. It was just assuming that, hey, they now know more things, and so that's why the spells are getting progressively more complex, and not as, like,
Yeah.
you know, just the simple whatever, Avada Kedavra and things like that, right? That's what I was assuming.
So,
I didn't really even...
I don't know, because, see, the thing that, to me, that and maybe I'm totally superimposing this complexity, but I kind of, because I remember hearing them learn the spells, and I'm like, okay, you guys have your, you know, basic spells, your Guardian Leviosa, whatever, your Stupefy, but, like, to me, I was like, okay, but, like, if these are the spells you're learning as a young wizard, then you're just going to get these freaking ultimate Dumbledore level spells, and it doesn't matter. But what I actually think is cool, and in the way that they showed in this book, is that it's not like, oh, you know, once you become this certain level, you have different spells. It's like, no, this is all cumulative. And it's not that you'll learn stronger spells. It's actually like you saw them up against full level wizards now, holding their own, because it felt a lot more like it's a matter of strategy, not just magic energy.
No, yeah, that's, yeah.
I don't know, this was the first book where I think that was fully demonstrated, because you've never seen, besides against Voldemort, which wasn't really fair because they had their wands binding or whatever, we've never seen the kids go up against full level wizards, and I thought that was a really cool moment where it finally showed that.
Oh yeah, same. No, I definitely think it was a really cool moment to see, like, you know, them actually starting to be able to, you know, be competent as far as, like, when to use certain things, or, you know, things like that. Just being a little more, like, not just blasting something, but, you know, maybe thinking a little more, and then seeing, like, how the adults kind of do it.
And it makes it feel less convenient, too. So, like, when they pull out a spell, it feels... And the way they would counter, like, the Accio or Accio, whatever, like, thing where they were, like, try to pull the prophecy out of his hand, because that would be the first thing you would do. Like, the fact that they included some of that stuff in the book as opposed to the movie, and then they had a counter for it, and they dealt with it. I liked that they showed that, because one of the big things for me in the movie is I was just like, oh, why can't we just use a Polyjuice potion? And it's like, oh, well, now I know why. Like, and the fact that they establish certain things like that, it makes the magic feel a lot more grounded. Obviously, it's magic. It doesn't need to be realistic. But I think for a good story, it needs to be grounded and it needs to feel like there's limits.
Yeah, in its own universe.
And I think 100% it did feel like there were limits. Where it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you can know the killing curse all you want. That doesn't mean you're a good wizard. Because I was like, why wouldn't you use the killing curse when you're watching? It's like, wouldn't there be times... Like, it almost... Like, in the movie, sometimes it feels like it's like, oh, you should use a gun or a knife in battle. It's like, well, obviously I'd rather use a gun.
Yeah, you're definitely right, yeah.
In the book, it's like, okay, well, it's not about... It isn't, as you get a stronger wizard, you get a bigger weapon. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt that. Like, especially if we're comparing to the movies. Like, the movies, the magic did seem a little bit like, oh, I just used this spell and I shoot it at you, and it's like, you're basically dead or you're not, It's like, okay.
Yeah, or it misses you and you're good or not. But this was like a lot of counter blocking.
Yeah, and, a little bit more thinking, I feel like, and a little more strategy. It was like, okay, I can't use this actually. It's like, okay.
Yeah, which I really liked.
It's cool.
I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I think the biggest theme I got was like the parenting sort of theme, where it's like, however well-intentioned you may be.
I think that too. I think it was the whole withholding info for the, trying to, for the sake of like helping or safekeeping, kind of.
Yeah, and the fact, too, that it's like, these people, your heroes aren't necessarily perfect. And I really liked the Lupin moment where Lupin was talking about it being like, we were kids, like, we all did things that I regret. And I thought that was kind of an interesting moment, and I wonder how that's going to play into Harry's development as a character. Because it got told to him, but I don't think it necessarily really registered fully yet. And so, knowing what I know with the movies and, like, him and Malfoy being friends and different stuff like that, like, I'm curious how that plays into it. Because that is a very interesting thought where it's like, obviously in Harry's shoes, and anyone as a kid, even me now, like, I'm 19, I feel like I know everything that I can know, and that's all that I can act on. But I guarantee you, 5 years from now, I'll be like, wow, you were a moron. And so it's that interesting thing where it's like, as humans, as you progress, like, you can't be like, dude, when you were 5, you stole that piece of candy from me. Like, that'd be ridiculous. Like, he was 5.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
And I think that people make the mistake of doing that and stopping when you're 18 or stopping when you're 25. And it's like, dude, humans do that till they're dead. And obviously there are things that are unforgivable, or not unforgivable, but things that are very serious and need to be treated more seriously. But I just kind of thought that whole idea and that theme that I think should be applied to Snape, but Sirius and everybody, is kind of like, look, people are very imperfect human beings, but there is a serious possibility for change. I don't care how old they are.
Yeah.
And you have to realize that as a human, like, you change. Like, people just change. And things that they thought were good, even months before, like, I regret that. I that was wrong. And so all you can judge them on is their, like, actions now, kind of.
No, yeah. I did like that, that theme of, sometimes you put these people on pedestals and they're not exactly, the gods you think they are. And so it's cool to see that Harry is now starting to really, like, kind of grow into that, like, reality of, everyone, even his dad, even Dumbledore, these people are all human, and they make mistakes, but a lot of times you can't, like, judge people in just black and white. You make a mistake, you're evil, you don't, you're good. That's just not how it is, you know? And I think he's starting to, go through that maturing process. He's starting to get weathered a little bit.
Yeah, which I think is really cool to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you guys for joining us for this discussion. Overall, I think I liked the book a little bit better than you did.
Yeah,
I think
so as well.
What do we think is the best book so far? We're halfway through the series kind of here, so I want to, like, now not comparing it to the movies at all, just books. I would say it's got to be Prisoner of Azkaban.
I think it's Prisoner of Azkaban, probably Goblet of Fire right after.
They're real close. See, I like Prisoner of Azkaban, and then maybe this book, and then Goblet of Fire. But Goblet of Fire and this book for me are neck and neck. But that's just because I think even though Goblet of Fire was such a big improvement from the movie, I liked some of the story points and this was a little bit more like mature and kind of like epic with like it's wartime.
Oh,
so I think that I have kind of just a bias towards that like background and thematic, and the whole freaking Dumbledore boss fight at the end is just so cool.
No,
like, you can't not like that. And I don't know about you guys, but I think that's one of the coolest fights, if not the coolest wizard fight in the whole movie.
Yeah,
series too.
I think so as well. Like that was really good.
That was such a cool movie fight, and it was kind of underwhelming some of the other boss fights later in the movies.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Either way, thank you for joining us on this journey. You guys are great. This has been awesome. Part 1 of Half-Blood Prince is going to be up on Patreon. Early access for you guys to check out. And thank you for joining us. I hope you guys are enjoying these reviews as much as we are. I don't know what we're going to do with Deathly Hallows. We may divide those as well into 4 parts. I don't know. It's a long book.
Okay.
So we'll see. I mean, they divided the movies into 2 parts, so we may divide the 2 into 2.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I'll let you guys know about that. I'll keep in touch about that. I need to see how long it is, because it's like we can only read so much in a week with everything else that we're doing on the channel. But yeah, thank you for sticking around. If you guys want to go check out the early access for Half-Blood Prince, that's going to be up on Patreon, and it really supports us, helps us keep doing what we're doing. And we will see you all in the next video.